hello, everybody. We got a few folks trickling in, but they'll catch up. My name is Victor Verb. I'm a systems engineer over here at Variphy, and I'm going to be your host for today's webinar. So today we're joined by our SE here, Matt Sykes, also known as AKA Matty Ice. He's another system engineer over here at Variphy. And for today's webinar, we're going to go over how to build some CDR alerts and how to use Variphy's configurable device list. Before we go ahead and get started, let's take a look at our agenda. We're going to be building some CDR alerts using the device list and quick overview of Variphy. We'll jump right into a live demo with Matty Ice over here. After the demonstration, we'll go ahead and pause for some Q&A, and then we're going to give away some prizes. So let's go ahead and go over a quick overview of Variphy. Variphy is one of the preferred analytics and management solutions for Cisco Collab. We provide industry-leading CDR, dashboards, widgets, as well as a host of other tools, as well as UCCX reporting and dashboards for your real-time UCCX metrics, remote phone control to be able to remotely control phones, as well as be able to see like live MOS scores, concealment ratios as phone calls are taking place. Another big factor within Variphy is our change management and as-built reporting, the ability to see what changes are taking place within your call manager historically, also compare historical changes in call manager to live running environments. And last but not least, trailing our list here is our DN, DI, and dial plan management. That really kind of gives everybody the ability to eliminate a lot of those spreadsheets that are floating around that everybody's using to kind of update DNs and other spreadsheets for dial plan information. So Variphy is a nice complete stack to be able to help manage your UC environment. And before we get started, one other thing that I do want to mention, Variphy does, of course, offer our enhanced Ninja Consulting Services, our NECS package. That's really based around those customers that are looking for a real hands-off solution. With our Ninja Enhanced Consulting Services, you get a dedicated systems engineer that is dedicated to you and your system. Anybody within your organization can contact Variphy and say, hey, I just need something done, and Variphy will go ahead and take care of that for you. So it's a real hands-off approach to being able to go ahead and manage the system for those folks that really just want that one-on-one hand-holding, unassisted report building, and dashboard configuration. So without that, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to jump right into a live demo, and Matty, I'm going to go ahead and pass you the ball here.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Victor.
All right, buddy. There you go.
All right, looks like I've got it. Let's go ahead and make sure I'm sharing my screen. All right, there we are. Hello, everyone. Matt Sykes with Variphy here. As Victor has prefaced here, we will be covering CDR device lists and alerts from the application, and maybe a couple other pieces if we have time within the session. So I would like to actually start with CDR devices or device lists within Variphy. Now, certainly they're not that widely used, so I just kind of want to touch on them for a few minutes here. So within the UCM configurations underneath the cluster sections in the configure specifically, we can configure devices specifically. Now, whether or not we need to do that for voicemail, for Unity, for instance, if the voicemail ports that we see in the raw CDR are not matching with, I guess, the default Cisco VM port label referencing that they put on them, we can certainly override that and identify that as well. So what I'm mentioning by that is, for instance, if you may have within your environment, if you're utilizing our widgets or even the reporting, you'll notice that the voicemail count and percentages are certainly part of the package as far as the statistics are concerned. So if the default device lists for the voicemail ports out of the box do not map properly, and these are just returning zeros for you, most certainly we need to configure a device list for them. So that is as simply as one that I actually have here, and actually I have a list built into it, so I can actually take us right to it. I have my own voicemail device lists here, because these two patterns that actually I can look at in my CDR. So certainly we can hop into the ad hoc history search and look at my my Unity ports, but these do not fit the normal, I guess, nomenclature of the Cisco ports. So that's why I override these. I match them so that we can provide the counts for the widgets and the reports as well. Some of your systems may already have those synced out of the box. That is perfect, but if it is not, as I just kind of mentioned here, we can certainly override that with a CDR device definition for Unity, multiple Unity devices that I have on this list. Now, the lists are mainly used for voicemail identification, but also, I guess, gateways. So most certainly, I also have another device list here as well, which is keying off of two of my primary Cube devices. Looks like I have Cube primary as well as a Cube data center. I definitely know that those are in my CDR, so I can certainly utilize this as kind of another additional search criteria piece. So once I have all this nicely populated, obviously I can extrapolate this information from the ad hoc history search, which I'll kind of validate right now. So we'll just easily just hop into the ad hoc searches where I love to live, because I can pretty much build anything in this ad hoc utility that I need. So we'll just pick on maybe just something pretty simplistic here, and I'll use previous 7 days just to validate actually the voice gateways that we're using from the environment, and show you another search criteria option to search off of those device lists, which I'll get to in a moment once the lab pulls back a couple days worth of data here for us. So like I said, at the moment, I'm searching by the default original called party number search criteria. I'm utilizing the conditional operator of starts with and a single character of a capital X, which is a wildcard character, denoting pretty much that anything that at least has one character in this field, pull it back for me. Okay, so very simplistically, I'm just looking at my data here. I'm looking at the originating and terminating devices. I really don't care too much about this, the test phones. But as we can see here, we do see the the 8,000 tied to Unity per my previous example. But I'm looking for some of the other ones. Here we are. So I can see my Cube data center. I can see the Cube primary. So I can certainly use those in individual search sets if I wanted to. But I could certainly also configure them in a device list like I just had. And we can also certainly use that as well as it's a search criteria piece. So I just type in the word list, and it gives me the combination search criteria of originating or terminating CUCM CDR device list. And then we add that and use the lookup for my denotions of my SIP routes or my voicemail if I wanted to. Mainly I'd be leaning towards the SIP. For these search sets off of the device list, then we can take those to either use for an kind of a concurrency analytics report, or we can even use it to populate the widget with. So within this widget here that I always kind of highlight for you, bidirectional SIP concurrency capacity within the environment, or my lab environment at least. Well, certainly I could very easily use a device list search criteria piece as opposed to the combination or my normal kind of go-to, which would be originator or terminating device name, matching some type of a pattern. I can certainly as well as use the list option here as well. And it would bear the same fruit. So just a couple different options that we have for device list within Variphy. Just definitely want to touch on that briefly because we never seem to touch on it, and I think it has been asked once or twice before. What do these do? What are these for? So that's certainly what the device lists within the UCM configurations are set for. Okay, so with that knowledge, I'm going to segue over to alerts, because definitely alerts are on the top of people's minds with regards to traffic coming and going out of the environment, whether it's an admin, whether it's a supervisor, or maybe even someone who's responsible for a certain department or a certain group of extensions or DNs. So I've got, let me pump the font up here a little bit for everyone. I have about 7 alerts configured at the moment. They're covering a wide range of different pieces. We're going to touch on each one of them real briefly. I do want to mention, though, that we do have threshold alerting coming down the pipeline in Variphy in the near future. It is being coded at the present, but it is not available, but will be coming down the pipeline. So we're certainly excited about that. So I don't want to speak too much to that. So let's look at our current alert possibilities. So we can certainly key off of digits dialed, certain thresholds with regards to maybe duration, short, medium, long duration calls, disposition of the call. Is it an international call? Is it an emergency style call? So let's just run through these real briefly. So I key off of these 800 alert, the 800 numbers in this lab environment to key off of maybe all day. And then maybe I can embed some search set functionality to identify what I'm looking to key off of for such an alert. Now, potentially, if I'm looking for potential toll fraud, maybe I'm looking at 800 numbers that are being utilized to or fro the environment, maybe with a duration capacity on it potentially, but maybe we could even nail this down a little even more intently, where we could actually key off of maybe a certain hour of the day. So for instance, maybe we only care about toll-free calls coming or going maybe after hours, maybe during business hours or on the weekends, when most certainly traffic to or fro those lines should not be happening. Maybe we want to be alerted by it. So we can certainly solidify an individual or a distribution list to email these alerts to. The search sets are pretty simplistic as far as how to build these. So for this one, we can see I'm looking at all the pretty much the pertinent DN fields within the UCM CDR and just having contains labels or search set functions in here to identify the toll-free usage. Well, certainly we could pair anything in here with regards to any data matches or sequences therein. So real simplistically, this is just an 800 calls or a potential toll fraud, we can call it. 911 alerts, pretty straightforward as well. We're going to be looking at all hours on those as well. We'll be searching specifically for 911 patterns, or if you have a specific outside line access code of maybe an 8, so maybe we're looking for 8 911s off of original or final called party numbers. Those are pretty standard as far as 24 hours a day emailing to a distro list. And after hours, as I had mentioned, so most certainly maybe some traffic shouldn't be happening, in the evening, off hours, as I just, previously mentioned. Perhaps maybe the cleaning crews making calls that they shouldn't be, that could be incurring, obviously toll-free or, long distance or, international charges to the environment, to the providers. So we can certainly also specify, what hours of the day we're looking for. So as we can see here, I have a couple of date time select windows that I actually created myself. So I could identify the, the AM and the PM non-business hours that these calls could be happening. So I'm keying off of simplistically just internal digits dialing out that could potentially be dialing out for greater than say 5 minutes. I can pair this with a final called party number search criteria piece that's going to match or at least give the disposition of a long distance or a potentially an international call. So it's taking the internal characters out of the equation, so we can alert that as well. This one, like I had mentioned, so I'm keying off of the non-business AM and PM hours. So I believe I'm doing 8 p.m. to midnight or 11:59 and 12 a.m. to 6:59 a.m. on this lab example here. And I certainly and I've triggered all these alerts as well. So I'm going to show you those in a moment as well, but I just want to touch base on them all. So pretty much these are going to be your standard kind of digit-based kind of alerts. The after hours will be digit-based, but also time related as well. So we can see the time of day windows right here. We can very easily turn these off or turn them on at our disposal as well. For instance, if maybe one of these alerts is set up improperly and is triggering too often and is flooding people's inboxes, may need to disable it here or there until we can find out what the issue is there with that alert. So I'm going to go down the list now, and here's another powerful one, is cause codes. If you've been on any of my webinars before, you've most certainly heard me talk about cause codes within the environment. So I run this one on an all hours functionality, but the search set is kind of where the magic comes from. So now in this example here, I'm specifically looking for out of bandwidth cause code errors that we're seeing, or cause codes, not necessarily errors, but at least the cause codes that are identified in the UCM CDR. So most certainly there's a laundry list. Normally I grab the top 3 normal cause code scenarios, flip the Boolean on them to identify any of the potentially abnormal or malicious looking cause codes. But for this example, I'm just keying off of potentially out of bandwidth errors coming or going. And we can certainly trigger off of that, obviously email to the notification settings. And I have triggered off of this as well, because most certainly during the COVID pandemic that we've all been in the middle of for most of this year, we definitely have seen usage and route usage spike, let's say, within the environments, definitely with the fluctuation of a remote workforce from home and transitioning back or from to or fro, let's say, we've definitely seen a lot of spikes in the usage within the environment. So in addition to utilizing our concurrency widgets and our reporting, most certainly we can also trigger on out of bandwidth issues as well, because definitely if clients are unable to call the business, that's definitely a negative impact on the business. I have triggered off of that one as well, so I will show that example momentarily. Let's go to the next one, international callings. Pretty straightforward here, another digit-based style of alerting. I'm utilizing all hours here. I'm actually I did skip over this. I'm utilizing a custom label set as well that we've been talking about and kind of pushing forth for the 12.2 release that we have covered in some previous webinars. But the search sets for international, once again, I'm just matching a digit pattern here. There's a couple of different fields I can most certainly use. I could potentially even have a public search set on a handful of these as well if I wanted to, but I'm using private search sets. But once again, digit recognition here, utilizing an access code 011, padding with some X's, wildcards, and then utilizing the conditional Boolean operator it starts with in both patterns, so I can grab all just in case perhaps maybe they're able to hack the system and don't need an access code to get out to an international line. So I have an example of that as well. Long duration calls, so most certainly, duration threshold based, that does exist presently. So at the moment, I'm just keying off of any calls that are greater than an hour, let's say. I could most certainly pad on additional search criteria here if I want to be more finite with, the groups of people that are making these calls or the styles of calls that this alert can trigger on. And obviously, if I have more than one piece of search criteria, I will most certainly want to match all. Okay, and the last is going to be a malicious call. So now in what is it, Cisco 11.5, I want to say, Cisco has included the capability of actually having a soft key template on devices where they can actually specify or click on it or touch it and specify that this call should be flagged as a malicious call. So we certainly see that in the raw CDR now. And actually, move this off the screen. there's actually a little note from Cisco on it as well. So we can actually see, the malicious call identification prereqs and all of this information with regards to setting these on devices, but we can trigger off of it as well. And actually it flows into the comment section field of the Cisco CDR. So here it is right here. I'm keying specifically off of any malicious calls that have been made. And I think I have a trigger on that as well. Okay, so those in a nutshell are 7, I think, of my most powerful alerts within Variphy as the system sits as of today. So we can certainly, touch on these as well, and they can be utilized to utilize additional search sets on top of what I've kind of already baked into them in a general demonstration. So with these alerts, I have pounded a whole bunch of data through my lab before this webinar. So I did actually trigger on these. So I definitely triggered on toll-free 800 calls. We definitely have 20 of those, and we'll list them out. The 911s, the out of bandwidth, I had 5 of those. But not only can we alert on this information, but we can also kind of, or at least we already do kind of reflect it within our dashboard widgets. So for instance, let me just pull this to the side. And let me update one of my dashboards here. Let's just jump into UC Admin 2. I believe I have a good recognition for some of these. Okay, back out just a smidge. Reorganize this just a little bit. Okay, so I have dropped calls, I have after hours calls, I have malicious calls, and I have the notion of exactly the history of these malicious calls. So I can key off of these comment codes as well. So within this statistical widget here on one of my boards, I can see those 2 malicious calls. So once again, we're keying off of comment as malicious over a certain time frame, et cetera. And I'm also baking in then the average call duration for it. So we can see the average call duration for these 2 calls was 5 minutes and 36 seconds. And then right next door, I have a history widget here to actually list out the detail for these 2 calls that have been labeled malicious by an internal entity. So we can certainly trigger off of that and then show it within a dashboard widget as well, just like as well as the out of bandwidth error cause code that I have. I've got 5 of these right here that came through into my email inbox. And here they are right here. Out of bandwidth, 5. Okay, that would be certainly alarming. Definitely, if that's creeping up the high point of the leaderboard, let's say on my cause code widget here, that would be of some consequence. But certainly, the concurrency widget should also show, I would think, a flatlining, if you will, of concurrency within the widget, showing obviously that's topping out at full capacity for all channels within the search scopes there. Okay. So as well as, obviously we've covered a lot of this stuff before, but yeah, most certainly the 911 calls we can trigger on that. The internationals we can trigger on those. The after hours, the dropped calls, and just to show you a little briefly what some of those alerts would look like. I'm not going to pull necessarily over my whole inbox, but let's just take a peek at them. Example of what the 20 toll-free, potentially malicious 800 number calls were. We're going to push all this information through in the actual alert messaging as well, so we can actually see all the pertinent information, the caller ID, the number that obviously that was trying to dial out to, the ring time, the duration, also the call scenario, whether it was answered, whether it was an abandoned, whether it's meeting our criteria. But these are just a toll-free ones. So we've got 20 of these to very easily gauge those. I pounded them through all at one time with lab data, so that's why they all came in one email. Otherwise, they would have been staggered. We've got our out of bandwidth guys right here as well. We can see these. We can see actually the calls, the outbound calls that are in the internal entities are trying to make, from what MAC, the time of day, the call duration. They're not able to get out, a couple of seconds and it fails and goes out of bandwidth error. So that's definitely going to be good to know for any of the admins in the environment that are responsible for the UCM platform. Okay, enough of my inbox. Let's pull this away. Okay, so I believe, for hours I've touched on that. All right, so I believe at this point, I'm going to segue a little bit to potentially maybe some cosmetics, if you will. So let's use one of my other labs here. Let's use, I wanted to show real quickly, which one thing we never really talk about, nor do I really see many support tickets come through on, but what about some of the kind of the branding that we can do within Variphy? So for instance, the reports, obviously they come standard with the Variphy logo on all of them, but you know what? We could override that if we wanted to, or if you wanted to. We could very easily update. We could very easily update the report, the custom report logos, the system, the company, the cluster system logo. We could certainly do that as well, and it would look, maybe something, whether it's something like I have here. I've got a jack-o'-lantern. Maybe I swap it out for something a little more creative. Let's say maybe I want to use the Dark Knight. we could very easily now upload these photos, and they will be very easily added onto the reports. Dark night, here he is. So very simplistically, I've got that. Just upload this, and I'm just going to upload that. There we are. I will just run a quick little example report. I don't really need any data, but it's to show you the effects of the logo or potential rebranding with your own corporate logos on the reports. I don't think I have any data in here, but I don't need any data. Really only looking to see the front page here. There we are. So very, very cool, something sleek. Maybe you want, like I said, you can certainly put your own corporate logo in here, but if you wanted to maybe put something maybe a little cooler or more a little dazzling on the reports, most certainly you can definitely do that, as well as the styles as well. I mean, this is our standard kind of color schema for the layouts of the tables and the charts and all of that good stuff. But certainly in the settings in the system section underneath the report styles and settings, you can go ahead and modify all those cosmetics as well. Now, I've actually, in one of my labs that I've actually rebuilt, I actually spent some time in here before actually defining all of these and tweaking them to my own color satisfactions. It can be time consuming, but certainly don't get me wrong, all of the color applications and modifications, playing with the borders, the top left, the tables, the charts, all of that is very easily updatable through here if someone wants to get a little extra rambunctious with the cosmetic nature of the reports that are going out to the end users and audience members. So at this moment, Victor, I believe I'm running a little low on content, sir. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Yeah, you're good. And hey, everybody, it looks like we got a couple repeat customers that have joined our webinar. So I think I forgot to mention, if you guys do have any questions, there's a QA panel in the bottom right. Feel free to ask them there. We did have a couple people that had asked some questions, Matt. So one of them was, kind of segues right into this, is our last one, is can you send me that pumpkin picture? So Steve will make sure we send you that pumpkin picture. Thank you.
Sure.
Another question that came in is, can we alert on data volume? And Carl asked that, so I think, Carl, there's a couple different things that we can do from data volume. We can't necessarily threshold alert on, say, a particular gateway or device pool or anything like that yet. That is something that we're currently in development on. However, Matt, if you want to go ahead and take us a walkthrough, we can give you some alerts if CDR is low. So, Matt, I'm not sure if you have a lab accessible for anything like that, but there are some alerts you can set up at the cluster to where if you stop getting CDR for a certain period of time, or you get a low volume of CDR, we can send some alerts, but that is a little bit more cluster based.
Mm-hmm. Correct. So, correct, underneath the UCM cluster settings, we have a section labeled as data monitoring settings. We just need to turn on that checkbox. There is a minimum threshold. We can obviously put a scheduler on this to run the monitor. If we don't need to include weekends, we don't need to. But this is going to be kind of the minimum threshold that the Variphy application is processing Cisco CDR. If it falls below this can obviously is wild. So we can certainly set it to 10, 20, whatever the threshold may be for the environment, to go ahead and trigger an alert over to an admin group or a specific individual admin, to make them aware that the CDR feed is down or low.
Excellent, thank you, Matt. So yeah, so I hope that answers the question. Like I said, we are in the process of building some threshold alerting to where you can actually do it based off of data. We don't have that yet. This is much more based on the call manager in itself, and it's a great way to see if maybe something's down on a publisher or anything like that.
Definitely.
One more question, and not necessarily about your presentation. Mike had asked if we're still in beta. So we did recently release a 12.2 version of Variphy that is still in beta. However, we have just gone, the first round of the beta was extremely successful. That was kind of a requested type situation where if a particular customer wanted that, but we have gone public with that beta version. So that is available to anybody that's looking to go ahead and download and install the latest release. And that installs just like any of our installers, quick 5-minute job to get those installed. All right. All right. And I think that's all I have for questions, Matt. So I'm going to go ahead and steal the ball back from you here. And let's go ahead and I'm going to share my screen out, and let's go ahead and get into the final session here. So I want to thank everybody for attending today. The winner for today's webinar is going to be Samuel Baggy. Sam, I didn't butcher that last name. Congratulations, Samuel. We'll go ahead and reach out to your account manager and make sure they get in touch with you. So thank you for attending today. And then last but not least, again, thank you for attending. Don't forget to register for our house party. We're giving away over $5,000 in prizes for our house party. We're going to have a great walkthrough on things that are upcoming, our current roadmap, as well as some information on our upcoming cloud solution. So definitely register for that. And then, you know, I'll be on there. Our buddy Matty Ice will be on there doing some technical sessions as well. So with that, everybody, hey, I want to thank you all for attending. Enjoy the rest of your day. And thanks again, El. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye.